Have you ever received payments of cash and then you not reported it on your taxes? You see, there's this really common misconception that if we're paid in cash, we don't have to report it to the IRS. And that simply is not the case, okay? When we think of a babysitter, we don't think about issuing them a 1099, right? When we think about maybe it's a neighborhood child and they're out mowing lawns in the summertime, we don't think about them having to pay taxes on that income, right? Because for the most part, it was cash basis. But guess what? Anytime money is exchanged for a good or a service, the IRS wants that reported because they want you to pay taxes on that.
Welcome to the Tax Relief with Timalyn Bowens podcast. Are you behind on taxes? Is the IRS threatening you or your business? Are you overwhelmed and confused about how to resolve your tax issues? Let's join Timalyn as she explains your options and how she may be able to help. Timalyn Bowens is America's favorite EA.
Hey, family. Welcome to episode 34 of the Tax Relief with Timalyn Bowens podcast. Today, I want to deal with a topic that can be very, very controversial online. But the fact of the matter is, it's actually very straightforward and clear cut when we actually look at what the Internal Revenue Service has to say. What we're going to talk about today is tax evasion versus tax avoidance. And the reason we're going to take a look at this is because I've seen these two terms used as synonyms, but they are actually very, very different. You see, one is illegal and one can be very, very beneficial to you as a taxpayer. So let's get right into it, okay? We're going to take a look at what tax avoidance is, and we're not going to spend as much time on that, right? Because that is a legal strategy that you can use to reduce your tax liability. What we're going to focus on is the tax evasion. We're going to look at what the underground economy is, and we're going to talk about if you're participating in that, you need to stop ASAP, okay? We're going to talk about what tax evasion can get you because you can serve prison time for tax evasion. And if you are guilty of tax evasion right now, you're going to be looking at back taxes. And I'm going to talk about what you can do to get right with that. Okay. So first things first, again, they're not the same thing. Tax avoidance is any action you take to lessen your tax liability and maximize your after-tax income. Okay. So investing in a tax planner to think of and come up with different strategies to reduce your taxes, that qualifies as tax avoidance, okay? If you're a business owner and you have a home office and you utilize the business use of home deduction, that is tax avoidance. If you own a home and you are able to itemize, so you itemize your mortgage interest and use that as a deduction, charitable contributions, that is going to be tax avoidance. Now, when we switch over to the illegal part, I want you to think about these things. Have you ever said, I'll just pay you in cash so you don't have to file that on your taxes? Have you ever received payments of cash and then you not reported it on your taxes? You see, there's this really common misconception that if we're paid in cash, we don't have to report it to the IRS. And that simply is not the case, okay? When we think of a babysitter, we don't think about issuing them a 1099, right? When we think about somebody, maybe it's a neighborhood child and they're out mowing lawns in the summertime, or, we have, well, We used to have newspaper boys, not so much anymore. We don't think about them having to pay taxes on that income, right? Because for the most part, it was cash basis. But guess what? Anytime money is exchanged for a good or a service, the IRS wants that reported because they want you to pay taxes on that. Now, our income tax system in the US is based on the idea of voluntary compliance. What does that mean? Because you may be thinking to yourself, it's not voluntary at all. I have to report my income or I get in trouble. This is true. But within this system, compliance relies on individual citizens, which is you, the taxpayer, to report their income freely and voluntarily. So we calculate our own tax liability, right? And they're relying on us to do that correctly. Now, that's a whole nother episode with how complicated the tax system is that you could really get in trouble for not calculating it correctly. But we'll save that for another time. The whole reason I'm bringing this up and I want to talk to you about it is because, as you know, if you've been listening, I'm on a personal mission to fill the tax literacy gap one taxpayer at a time. So, anything that I can share with you that will help you stay out of trouble with the IRS, I am going to do that here on this podcast. Okay. Over on my YouTube channel, I'm going to do it. Now, if you want personalized help, you can book a paid consultation with me over at bowenstaxsolutions.com. But this is just to give you background information so you can do your own research and connect with your own tax professional from here. Anybody that tells you that you don't have to report cash income is not a tax professional that's looking out for your best interest, okay? So even when we're looking at things like gambling, if we are looking at garage sales, babysitting, tutoring, if somebody comes and rakes your leaves or shovels your snow and you pay them in cash, these activities are part of what we call the underground economy because the IRS knows that this happens, but there's no way to really track it. And the IRS knows that this happens not always maliciously, but by some people maliciously as a way to avoid paying taxes. Now, if taxpayers fail to pay what officials say they owe, the IRS can assess a penalty in addition to collecting the back taxes because this is tax evasion. All right. So when we're looking at tax evasion, it's going to be the failure to pay or a deliberate underpayment of taxes. So for our W 2 employees, the way that you pay in taxes is from your paycheck withholding. So if you have a deliberate underpayment, that means by simply filling out your W 4 with the intention of not having any taxes withheld is considered tax evasion. Okay? So all those tips and tricks you hear people talking about where you can go exempt on your W-4, which the only reason you would be able to do that is if you have enough children to cover your tax liability with a child tax credit, or if you make beneath the standard deduction. Anybody else is not going to qualify to go exempt. And I'll say 99% of people, because I don't want to make it an absolute statement, but you should not be going exempt. If you know, because I see this a lot with traveling nurses, if you know you're going to make over six figures this year, you have no business going exempt on a W-4. That is deliberately underpaying your taxes. And when this happens, not only is the IRS going to come in and assess you a penalty, and you're going to have the back taxes, you can also face up to 5 years in prison. Now, you may be thinking, that's extreme because we have some people who are known for tax evasion, right? So when we are thinking about tax evasion, sometimes it's used as a method to get criminals when other information can't be proved or crimes can't be proved. So, for example, we have Al Capone. They finally got him on tax evasion because of the illegal activities he was involved in. He was not reporting the income from that and paying taxes on it. Now, for the actual tax evasion, the time served can be upwards of 5 years, but when it is joined with other charges, the time can go past that. Now, in more recent years, we have other people that are famous tax evaders. For example, and you can look these up, that's why I'm giving you their names. You can check out Martha Stewart, who was in trouble for tax evasion, singer Willie Nelson, singer Lauryn Hill. We even have a couple of actors, Nicolas Cage and Wesley Snipes, just to name a few. But I don't want you to say, well, they're all famous. That could never happen to me. Let me tell you about a case, and this is actually, you can go find it on the Department of Justice website. They let out a press release on Thursday, May 25th of 2023. Okay? So just 2 months ago from the recording of this podcast episode, it says North Carolina man sentenced to prison for tax evasion. So this North Carolina man was sentenced to 36 months in prison. All right. So what happened is he did not file individual income tax returns for most of the past 2 decades. Now you may be thinking, now why would he get in trouble for not filing his taxes? The reason is because based on the income he earned, he was required to do so. So we do have some people who aren't required to file. For example, let's say that we have someone who only receives Social Security income. They're not going to be required to file. Okay. Let's say we have someone whose earned income is underneath the standard deduction and they have no other sources of income. They're not going to be required to file a tax return. But in this example, he didn't file for the past 2 decades and he was required to do so. So let me stop. Is that you? Are you here now because you were curious as to what would happen to you if you haven't been filing your taxes? Well, this is something that could potentially happen. You could serve prison time for not filing those tax returns. So if you're in that spot right now, please, please, please get the help you need. And like I say, it doesn't have to be me. You have to get along with whoever is helping you in this situation because potentially they're going to be your power of attorney in a tax situation and they're going to speak on your behalf to the IRS to negotiate whatever this tax debt ends up being. And also, if the tax return is over a certain age old when you should have filed it, if you were due a refund, you have defaulted, essentially given that up to the IRS because you didn't file in time. So let's keep moving. So this gentleman, whose last name is Joy, ironically, right? He was living his best life, not filing his taxes for 20 years. He evaded taxes by submitting and maintaining with his employers Forms W-4 and state forms that falsely claimed he was exempt from federal and state income tax withholding. So, what I mentioned before, if you know that you need to have taxes withheld from your paycheck and you decide to go exempt, that is deliberately underpaying your taxes. That's considered tax evasion and it's illegal. As a result, over those 20 years, there were little to no taxes paid to the IRS. And in total, over 20 years, Joy earned more than 1.8 million in income and he would have owed more than $380,000 in state and federal income taxes. So, because he did not file his taxes, because I want you to think about that. Let's take your salary times however long you haven't filed. It may not be 1.8 million, but it's still going to be an amount where you would have owed taxes, right? Especially if you're following in the footsteps of Mr. Joy. You want to make sure that you get those filed ASAP so that you're in tax compliance as far as filing. Now, I've talked about it in other episodes. If there is a balance due because you haven't filed these and they're over 5 months late, you're going to be looking at failure to file penalties of up to 25% of whatever the tax is. Now, maybe there was something that happened in year 1, 2, or 3, right? You didn't just intentionally skip out on your taxes. You may be eligible for penalty abatement, which is relief from the penalty where we make it as if it never happened, but there's criteria for qualifying for the penalty abatement. Check out the episode where I talk about reasonable cause penalty abatement right here on this podcast and listen through and see if you think you may be eligible. Now, I never judge anybody's tax competency. If you've listened to the podcast before, you know that. But if you're in a situation where you need to file multiple years, you're in a situation where you're pretty sure you're going to owe, and you know that you have these failure to file penalties that are going to be stacked up, I can promise you you're going to also have failure to pay penalties. I would highly recommend finding a tax professional that you trust to get these returns filed and to step into your shoes to represent you before the IRS. Now, last episode 33, I covered what tax representation is. So if you don't know, you can go back and listen to that episode and it'll give you a better idea. But I just want to let you know that if you find yourself right now in a place where, oh, shoot, I'm a tax evader because I haven't filed my taxes, I know I'm going to owe. You are not alone. Okay. Now, I'm America's favorite EA. All right. And as an enrolled agent, I'm licensed and authorized to represent you before the IRS. But there are many competent EAs and tax professionals out here in the country. All right. So while it would be my honor to assist you to get on a consultation with you to see if we're a good fit, don't climb into a hole and let this problem get worse and worse and worse to the point where the IRS comes for you and now you may be facing prison time. Okay. Get ahead of the ball, get those returns filed, and then get into the negotiation phase. All right. Now, before I leave you, of course, I want you to do me a favor. All right. Number one, if you felt like I was talking to you again, you have to take the first step and book the call. If you would like a paid consultation with me, where I'm going to ask you questions to get down to the nitty gritty of what's actually happening and let you know what you potentially qualify for, you can book that with me at www.bowenstaxsolutions.com. If you'd like more information on different things that may be available to you as options to take care of this, please check out other episodes of this podcast because I walk you through those. I want to make the best of our time together on the consultation. Okay. So again, thank you for tuning in. You're helping me to fulfill my mission of filling the tax literacy gap one taxpayer at a time. But most importantly, it does not have to be me, but make sure you get the help you need. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to listen today. I'd like to thank Jim Ray Consulting Services for helping me get this message out to you. I hope you found the information helpful. Did you know 1 in 50 people have a tax problem? Please share this episode with your friends and family because you never know who may need help. Again, thanks for listening. Hey, just as a reminder, this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. It provides a framework and possible solutions for solving your tax problems, but it is not legally binding. Please consult your tax professional regarding your specific tax situation.